Welcome to Reform Review, the show that gets facts wrong about your favourite language reforms. I'm the Casual Conlanger, and in this episode, we'll be looking at HOS. HOS is a three-part handbook published in 1920 by the Simplified Spelling Board. The board was founded in 1906 by Andrew Carnegie, one of the richest Americans of all time, who funded it until its dissolution in 1920, a year after his death. From 1915 onwards, Carnegie criticized the board for its overly prescriptive approach. The handbook aimed to simplify English spelling, reaffirming several recent American spelling conventions preferred by dictionaries such as the Webster. Certain suggestions made by HOS are now standard in many English-speaking countries. To say that the board was stacked would be an understatement. The group of 30 mainly consisted of authors, dictionary editors, and professors, including Mark Twain and Dr. Melville Dewey, inventor of the Dewey Decimal System. To this day, HOS remains one of the most influential spelling reforms in English history. So, how did the Handbook of Simplified Spelling succeed where other attempts failed? Let's find out. Unlike last time, we won't look at phonology since HOS isn't a ground-up or a priori spelling reform. Given the board's plan for gradual rather than sudden change, tweaking lots of inconsistent words was the right move in my opinion, as it mimics actual spelling change more naturalistically. Depending on how you count them, HOS has 25 to 35 rules, which are nicely summarized in this table here. Most of them supported already popular American spellings. To keep this episode a respectable length, we'll stick to the notable ones. First, let's get rid of this eyesore. Much better. Change 1 replaces AE, OE, ash, and osh with E when pronounced like an aesthetic, but was also applied in words such as fetus and logorrhea, which is now standard in American, Canadian, and Australian spelling. Change 7 affected the most words, dropping silent or misleading E's word finally, with high-frequency words such as are, give, and have making the cut. I don't like the change for such common words, but it's far more effective for lower-frequency words like examine. For change number 13, the infamous I before E except after C rule received a deceitful modification, becoming I before E when it's pronounced E and was spelt EI. Jokes aside, with a bit of rearranging, it's actually quite simple. EI pronounced E becomes IE, but would be a nightmare to get used to for people who had already learnt the irregularities. Change 19 swaps the suffixes ISE and YSE for IZE when pronounced eyes. In present-day English, the non-Oxford British spelling ISE is becoming increasingly non-standard in the UK and is conventional in all of North America and Australia, with edge cases like analyze compromising with analyze. I try to be inclusive in my subtitles, so I put this usually. Change 24 respells OUGH according to its pronunciation. The spelling hiccup is now practically universal, plow and donut are standard in American English, and words like though and through are very common in informal texting. Change number 27 has RE in words like center and meter flipped, except after C to avoid mispronunciation, which is a well-known difference between British and American spelling. HOS also suggests a handful of otherwise unchanged words that should receive modifications. These words are generally quite troublesome even today, like counterfeit, forfeit, slight, and yeoman losing an E, and friend missing an I. There are 2 points to make here. First, although the handbook's success could be attributed to its funding from one of the richest people of all time, it's unfair to dismiss the facts. A group of around 30 intellectuals and academics worked on a project together for nearly 15 years that they knew would fail overall. They went for the classic aim high, hit low approach, and it worked. Fast forward to present-day English, and a few of these changes actually caught on, thanks in part to HOS's significant backing and support. Reading about HOS opened my eyes to a huge fundamental flaw in the current approach to language reform. Rather than prescribing what English orthography should be, the handbook simply described what it could be. The problem with the current approach lies within its creators. Most are idealists, so they often forget that people simply won't accept sudden reform. As Carnegie once stated to an editor of the New York Times, amended spellings can only be submitted for general acceptance. It is the people who decide what is to be adopted or rejected. Second, aside from English spelling's horrible inconsistencies, HOS's impact is one of the main reasons spelling reforms are so popular today. Esperanto also comes to mind in this respect. Despite what many Esperantists might say, the most famous conlang of all time is flawed. However, its aim and ultimately its success and popularity was and is a beacon of hope for many aspiring Auxlangers and linguists, because the adoption of an international auxiliary language became at least a tiny bit feasible, which encouraged them to make their own. Just like Esperanto, the Handbook of Simplified Spelling is flawed, and that's fine. It's a monument in English language reform for what it achieved, and for any reformers out there, its approach is a point of reference for your works. As per usual, let's have a look at the reform in practice. The following extract is taken from Part 2 of the Handbook of Simplified Spelling, throughout which the SSB supplies reasons for simplifying English. Reasons for gradual approach. It may reasonably be asked why the board, having this ideal goal in view, advocates its attainment by gradual approach rather than at a single bound. The answer is for the same reason that we walk across the street instead of leaping from curb to curb. The one is the customary natural method of reaching our destination, and one that experience has shown to be well within our powers. The other is theoretically more expeditious, but practically would delay all progress while mankind was seeking to develop a degree of muscular energy and concentration of purpose, beyond anything of which it has hitherto proved itself capable. Of those 109 words, only 4 were modified, so we can really see the idea of gradual reform coming through. I won't be doing test time anymore because it's unfair to only test reforms on how simple and phonemic they are. Aesthetic reforms aim to beautify the English language, not simplify it. Some controlled languages and subsets radically overhaul the entire structure of English to aid programmers in coding and computer logic. Some reforms are like if-langs in conlanging, asking questions like, what if English didn't have any Romance-derived vocabulary? Moving on, I'm also going to change the way I rank the reforms. One day I might go full on Jan Miesely style and just rate them individually instead, but for now I'll rank reforms with similar goals against each other, based on how enticing and feasible those goals are, and how well the reform achieves them. That said, all in all, I like HOS more than I like cut spelling, making it my favourite global language reform so far. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, where I'll be reviewing Benjamin Franklin's phonetic alphabet.